I'm Missy Micholka, the Menopause Midwife. I'm here to break down all the things about menopause and hormones that seem overly complicated, which is pretty much everything. With over 10 years of experience catching babies and 2 decades of intuitive massage therapy practice, I have spent the last few years deep diving into all things menopause to figure out why so many women are suffering and why there seems to be so much confusion about hormones and menopause. Calling on my midwifery experience and my desire to help women attain and maintain full autonomy, I will stay next to you during this life transition and help to explain the options as you step into your power and find optimal health. Hello, my lovelies. Today is Friday, June 20th, 2025, and I am thrilled to welcome Sarah Morgan to the show. She is an accomplished product innovator, founder, author, and all-around powerhouse in the health and wellness world. Sarah is known for her patented technologies across dietary supplements, medical foods, and functional pharmaceuticals, including my 2 favorite things, peptides and bioidentical hormones. She's got a true knack for identifying needs in the market and transforming them into meaningful solutions and products, and then connecting them with everyday people. Back in her clinical days, she was affectionately called the Gene Queen, which I would like to get into on another episode because genes are a whole nother situation that I don't know very much about and would love to learn about. But that deep clinical insight that she has given her the credibility as a field-shaping researcher and inventor. One of her most impactful ventures was founding a medical company focused on improving the lives of people who are taking prescription medications, specifically by addressing the medication-induced nutrient depletions, also known as MIND. She's also the author of a children's book on the microbiome called Buddies in My Belly, where she introduces us to friendly gut bugs like Lacti, Bifi, Strepti, and Bacilli. It's been a hit with kids, parents, and pediatricians alike, with over 50 5-star reviews on Amazon. Oh, and did I mention she holds multiple patents, including one for nutritional adjuvants designed to boost immune response alongside vaccines? What an impressive portfolio of work. What can't you do, Sarah?
Well,
Welcome.
I don't know. Well, I always like to push the boundaries, so it's fun.
That is so clear. And it's so hard to focus with a bio like that. But the thing that we're here to zero in on today is peptides. So, ladies and my guests, any men who are out there too, if you made it to my office hours on June 2nd, that's linked in the show notes. You'll have a basic understanding of peptides. And peptides really are the wave of the future in optimizing health. These are not your grandma's vitamins. Peptides and the science behind them are literally moving faster than any slow moving healthcare system can keep up with. So people are not waiting for FDA approval anymore. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We want options that help us feel better without the litany of side effects that can often sound worse than the reasons for the medication in the first place. So this is where peptides come in. Now, I'm going to say this, as always, we are not giving medical advice. You are smart humans. Make good choices for your bodies. So with that, we're going to jump right into it with Sarah. Sarah, for anyone who missed my office hours or who has not heard of peptides, can you give us like the 30-second overview of what a peptide is?
Yeah, I love that. So peptides are mini proteins. They're amino acid sequences, typically about 2 to 50 in length, we like to call a peptide. And they're different sequences that what's really neat is our body makes them. So they're natural. Our body makes about 7,000 of them every single day. And they act to drive all kinds of different biochemical pathways in our body, from our metabolism, our immune system function, brain function, and more. And they're really tools of the future for longevity and ultimate wellness.
So why would we want to put peptides back into our body? If we already make them, what's the need to add them in exogenously?
Well, our bodies, we know, start to decrease the amount of these different substances we call peptides that we make over time. So, an example of this is a peptide called GHKCU. It's a tripeptide, so 3 amino acids with a copper ion attached to it. It's in our plasma as humans, but we know that we have about a 60 to 80% decrease in this peptide as we get older, into our 60s and 70s. And it does a lot of really cool things, from helping with our skin, elastin, collagen, our hair follicles, but There's other cool things we're learning, like epigenetic regulation. It almost acts like a stem cell. So peptides are really neat when we think about our bodies are making them every single day, but we want to optimize those levels to keep our bodies and our biochemistry optimized so we feel really good every decade of life.
I'm so glad you explained that so well and clearly. And I think sometimes it's kind of like enzymes as well. And I don't know, I'd love your take on this because I always feel like as we age, we know that our production of enzymes really slows down. And so we really need to add in those exogenous enzymes to help our bodies function better. And so it seems like that's a similar thing with hormones and with peptides. Am
Yep.
I on the right track there?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think there's the age piece of it. And then there's also the individuality piece of it. Some of that gets into genetics. Some of that gets into, the different things that we've experienced as we go through life. And we maybe have health challenges, we have infections, we have different things that happen that can throw some of our balance in our biochemistry off.
Mhm.
Peptides are really this leading innovative tool to bring the body back to this ultimate place of wellness and resiliency. And they do it so fast. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit of replacement. We could think about it that way, but also optimization too for a lot of different decades of life is what I would say.
Well, when you say a lot of different decades of life, this was a little tangent, but I love tangents. Do you see peptides being helpful in younger people?
Yeah, absolutely. There are really great medical doctors that are using peptides even in pediatric populations, and they're getting fantastic results. I have a lot of people that decide to give their teenagers peptides for different reasons. Maybe they're athletes, they're recovering from an injury. There's interesting cases even with like growth restriction. We haven't really had great options for kiddos as they're going through their big in adolescent growth spurts, right? Where it's going to determine their height as an adult. I think there potentially could be some really creative use cases for that. And then, we look at people in their 20s and 30s, just because they're younger doesn't mean they're healthy. So these are
Exactly.
tools that can be used. We think of things like PCOS and a lot of the metabolic issues that are impacting us younger. We have higher cancer rates in younger people than ever. And, I think we need to pull out more tools to really help people optimize their health starting at a decently young age.
I agree with you so much on that. And I just want to touch on that really quick because I've been saying lately that I feel better now at almost 50 than I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I credit bioidentical hormone replacement therapy with a lot of that because I think I lived my whole younger life with some deficiencies in hormones that I didn't know. Nobody knew to even look for them because I was relatively healthy. But I have bioidentical hormones on board but also peptides that I've had on board for about 5 years and varying ones because my kids jokingly call me the peptide junkie and I'm always trying different things. But they definitely support my hormone journey as I'm replacing my hormones in postmenopause. It's pretty amazing. So I know we'll kind of dive more into some of the hormonal stuff in a little bit, but I wanted to talk for a minute about your background and your expertise in delivery systems because my listeners will know that delivery systems mean everything to me. And when I met you, we discovered that you actually created the delivery system for my very favorite hormones. And so, could you talk to us just a little bit about that journey?
So, really quick background on myself. I come from a family of cardiologists. I watched like triple bypasses in high school with my uncles and was planning on going to medical school. I did biology and chemistry as my undergrad. I was smart in that I was like, the ideal of going into medicine versus the reality, I think in life can be really different. So I worked on a neuropeds and trauma floor with a hospital system in the Mayo Clinic associated system. And I realized I was like, I don't think I want to do this, which was really scary because I'm like, well, then what am I going to do? Because nutrition and some of these other more innovative paths really weren't cool or popular, or there weren't, things that were defined as a career path. So I took the brave step. I said no. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I got a degree from a great program. I have a master's degree in clinical nutrition. It was basically all biochemistry. I love biochemistry at its core. And that really led me on this journey of science and creativity. And that is where I really realized my passion for innovation. So when we think about delivery technology, that's a big piece of how we push the boundaries to be able to use new tools for more people in a way that's accessible to them and efficient. When you're mentioning hormones, it was a really fun project. I worked with Quicksilver Scientific on their nano emulsion hormone line, not only for the things that we use, but also in terms of like more replacement, but also optimization for skin and vaginal health too. So that was really fun to create that. I connected with my current partners for Instamed. Tracy Gibbs is a PhD in pharmacology. So he's got a great background on the science. And then Ben Bartel is my other partner in Instamed. He's the manufacturing genius. He's been working on how we do this strip technology, which I know we'll jump into in more detail with our facility that we own in Salt Lake City, Utah. He's just like a magician in terms of that. It's not easy to do from a manufacturing perspective. I love connecting the dots, right? So peptides, I've been involved in that for and using them personally for about 9 years. Until now, peptides really have been delivered subcutaneous injection because most peptides, they're amino acid sequences, right? So if we put them in our mouth, swallow them, and expose them to our digestive enzymes, it's kind of like making expensive chicken. They break down, right? And they don't get into the bloodstream to elicit these signals that we want the way that we want to do that. So that's been to date. So we came together and I was like, gosh, I think there's this massive opportunity to basically take these amazing tools and go mouth to body without utilizing the GI tract, first pass of the liver, which we can dive into more deeply. So we created Instamed, and here we are with a new delivery technology, again, that I love. It's science and creativity to push the boundaries on something where more of the mass market can have access and utilize and experience the benefits from peptides.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing, like those of us who are quote unquote peptide junkies and have been doing it for a really long time, yeah, we only had the option of using needles, mixing them up ourselves like chemists in our kitchen, which for some of us is really fun because we have so much control over what we're doing and we're learning and we're just kind of living on the edge of those things. But what Sarah and Instamed have done is they've just taken all of the guesswork out and they've made it into these little strips. And I've had in my office really high quality pill form of peptides because I was like, well, I've got a lot of people who don't want to use the injection. It's a learning curve for sure. And I just didn't find that my people got results from the oral. So I love that you use that framing of expensive chicken because that's kind of what it felt like to me too. But I never had the words for it. So that's a wonderful phrase to think about. So while I love the idea of a pill form because it's easy, the submucosal or transmucosal delivery system is incredible. And we all know this if you've listened to me for a while, that we know that if we can avoid first pass metabolism, we are going to keep a lot more of the product and use it how it should be used. So that's where we're going with these strips. And the strips have kind of a funny name. It's buccal administration. So it's not like your belt buckle. It's spelled Buccal. And you might hear people say buccal. I wasn't sure. Sarah, let me know. It is buckle like your belt buckle. So it's easy to remember. But can you talk us through why and how you chose like the cheek? And I know sometimes people, they'll think they're going to put it on their tongue, but why does it matter where you put it in your mouth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we talk about this is a strip in our foil packaging. So it's pre-dosed as you talk about, which is really nice. So you just open this up and inside is this tiny little strip, which is awesome, right? So this is CJC. You can stick it on your tongue and it's actually going to go to the roof of your mouth. You can also stick it on the inside of your cheek. It's flexible of where you go. That's the transmucosal, right? So there's different areas. Now, There's some nuance with that. Technically, buccal means the cheeks. We also will say the upper palate is a really great place to put the strip because we don't want a lot of saliva when we're using the strip. We want it to adhere to that mucosal membrane and we want it to dissolve about 30, 45 seconds, right? And I would say for most people, it's about 30 seconds. We can make these strips any size and any thickness based off the active. So there's some science involved in that too, because we need enough surface area on that mucosal lining for the delivery to happen. Now, we don't want a lot of saliva because then what's happening is you're actually swallowing it and it's going into your GI tract. So the upper palate is really nice from a less saliva perspective. Everybody's mouth is a little bit different. So it's really flexible about where you put it. Why the mouth? Okay. And when we think of transmucosal delivery, we talk a lot about the gut and absorption and our gut health. Well, what we forget is the mouth is magic. There's so much happening in the mouth, and digestion and absorption actually starts in our mouth. Our mouth is really vascular. There's all kinds of capillaries really, really close to this mucosal membrane, making it perfect for certain actives to go mouth to body if we get our science right. So, what's really cool is the mouth loves sugars and amino acids. So, peptides are actually perfect in this delivery format. Not everything is, right? So, we need to be clear about that. I mean, we'd never put creatine, for example, in a strip because you need so much of it and it's better to swallow it, right? We never put a probiotic in a strip because you actually want that to be delivered into your gut. So it has to make sense in terms of the active that we're trying to deliver in this format.
I didn't know about the roof of the mouth. That's great information to pass along. And I think it might be a little easier too because it will keep the strip flat as
Yes.
it's on the roof of the mouth. So I love that idea. And I like the idea of it not being next to my teeth also.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
that people might really appreciate that too. But that brings up for me, I've had the question, what is the best time of day to use the strips, depending on which ones? I don't know if there's a general for all of them or if you have more specific timing for the others. And also, do we want to have freshly brushed teeth or brush our teeth right after? Like what are the best use cases?
Great question. So, peptides in general, when we use them, we want to use them in a more fasted state because they're signaling molecules. So, when we are eating and we're digesting and absorbing nutrients, the body's putting a lot of focus and effort to that. What I will say is, in general, peptides are flexible when you take them. But if you want to get the best results from your peptides, you want to do it in a more fasted state. So, doing it in the morning before you have breakfast, great time to do it. Doing it at night before bed, if you, let's say, eat dinner by 7, you can take your strip, 9:30, 10 o'clock. That's a beautiful time frame away from food because we want to elicit and signal these different biochemical pathways. And to do that and do it well, that's a great place to do it. Now, in terms of the mouth, we also don't want to have a bunch of other stuff going on in our mouth, right? So, great question about food. No, beverages, not as big of a deal, right? Unless it's something kind of funky that would coat your mouth, you would want to, avoid those scenarios. And then brushing your teeth, I think it's fine before or after. I don't think there's any problem with doing that. Again, I just wouldn't do it like 3 seconds before or after you're going to use the strips, right?
Right.
Like give a couple of minutes, maybe like 5 minutes before you're going to use the strip in a scenario like that. And then CJC 1295, we can go into some of the peptides. It's a secretagogue. That is a peptide that your pituitary gland naturally releases growth hormone. We think probably in 3 different pulses throughout the day. And so that is a peptide that's more of a circadian peptide that you want to mimic your body's natural rhythm. So you could take it at night before bed. It's going to help with sleep. That's when, after you release melatonin, you'll release growth hormone from your pituitary gland. Growth hormone helps kids grow. Growth hormone helps adults repair, heal, have a good metabolism, have good mental wellness, good muscle mass, bone density, all these really important things. So we're mimicking that by taking it at night before bed. Or the other option is in the morning when you wake up. Again, fasted state for this one is important. And then if you go to do a workout, you're going to feel amazing because
Mhm.
that peptide helps with amino acid uptake in the muscles, ATP production in the muscles. So you're going to have better strength, better endurance. You're not as sore. I mean, it's pretty dang magical. And then growth hormone also helps with our sleep quality. So a lot of times when people first use CJC, I had a guy just email me and he's like, I haven't slept this well in like 10 years. I feel so good. He's like, I've only used CJC for a week and this is amazing. And that's typically the first thing. And again, there's cycles of peptides that we can get into of how we use them properly and knowing what to expect and what to watch for is really great. But there's a few things that you want to do to optimize your response to peptides. And I would say fasting is the most important. And then second would be knowing the circadian rhythm ones, which again, the secretagogues, CJC is one of those.
So, with that, can we jump into how we pulse them and how we use them the best regarding the receptors and not creating receptor fatigue?
So I would say in general, most peptides you're going to use 5 days on, 2 days off when we think about a week. So the easy way to think about it is weekdays on, weekends off.
Mhm.
Just, unless obviously you have a different kind of schedule, you're traveling or there's something else that, works better for you. And then in terms of so there's a weekly schedule, and we do that because I like doing that with a lot of things. I like doing that with supplements as well, because if we're trying to signal a biochemical pathway, I think it's great to give a couple days off. One, to let the body be wise in homeostasis and rebalancing and kind of doing what it needs to do on those days off. And then to the point of what you brought up, it also keeps a sensitivity of our receptors. And I would say a sensitivity just of these biochemical pathways that we can use it in a way that over time the body's going to stay nice and sensitive to what we're trying to do and elicit.
Mhm. And I want to just jump in right here, real quick, for just a second, because a lot of my people are on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. That cycling does not apply to that if you are specifically menopausal, but also if you're perimenopausal. If unless you are cycling your progesterone purposefully because of your cycle, some people do better on that. And that's very different than 5 days on, 2 days off. I just want to clarify that if you are replacing your DHEA, your estradiol, your progesterone. You don't want to go on and off of those. We need to continually tap those receptors and fill them, but it is different with the peptides. Would you agree with that, Sarah?
Yeah, I would. I think everything is personalized, right? Based off of
Mhm.
someone. But yeah, when you're in a menopausal state, we want the signaling of those hormones to keep your receptor density high. Here's what's super cool about peptides, since we're going to talk about hormones. Secretagogue, so CJC is a peptide in that category, helps increase sensitivity of the receptors to your hormone replacement therapy.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
It's so
what's because it's interesting. Some people over time, and I would say a large percentage of people will notice that their hormones don't have the same response, right? They get almost this resistance to it.
Mhm.
And they're still important to use. But I think the sensitivity of the receptors is this massive conversation we're just starting to have. And it's interesting seeing, men, we have some data on this when they're on CJC with testosterone. One, they feel better. Two, their levels actually come up a little bit better and they're more responsive.
Fascinating. That is so fascinating. And yeah, and I agree with you 1,000,000%. It is all personal for sure. And I do see receptor fatigue with estradiol, progesterone, DHEA. So we do definitely work with that when that happens for our ladies. And the only reason I was saying about the cycling is that what I've had happen is women they'll like take it for a couple of days and then not for three and then back on. And what they're doing is they're creating a perimenopausal roller coaster for themselves. And
Yeah.
so I love though that the CJC is helping to maintain somehow, I don't know what the chemical response and reaction is there, but somehow maintaining that sensitivity or increasing it of our
Mhm.
receptors to our hormones. That is really wonderful.
Yeah. So CJC, again, as a secretagogue category of a peptide, one of the things that it's doing is it's actually optimizing our metabolism. And going back to cellular efficiencies, optimizing how our cells are going to utilize energy sources, what they're doing every single day, all day long. We know as we get older, our cells become less efficient. And this is from Stanford's omics data they published in Nature of November 2024. If you haven't read it, it's fantastic. They looked at all this data of like what's happening to our metabolism. We learned aging is not linear. We
Mm,
have aging events. The first one is around age 44. And that is an aging event of our metabolism, how our bodies utilize glucose first, then how our bodies utilize fat as an energy source, and also how well we metabolize alcohol, they found. So when people are like, oh, as I get older, I can't tolerate alcohol, what's happening?
mhm.
It's real. It's a cellular metabolism process that your body isn't as good at as it was in your 20s. So, one of the things when we think about tolerating hormones, hormone sensitivity, goes back to metabolism, cellular efficiencies and metabolism. The better your cells work, the better you're going to respond to peptides, hormones, supplements, everything. So when we think about that, it makes a little bit of sense because a secretagogue, CJC, increases our metabolism in the cell, our ability to utilize glucose, and it increases something called beta oxidation. So we utilize our fats, we improve our mitochondrial function, the little energy buddies that are in our cells that are making ATP. It's like the cash exchange of our energy. We make our body weight and ATP every single day. So if that starts to slip a little bit, you're like, ugh, I just don't feel that great. Right. So that's where I think it comes in where it's helping with some of that sensitivity because the better our metabolism is, the more sensitive we are going to be to the tools we use to optimize our health.
That makes complete sense. And I think we're always chasing better metabolism. I know I am with my people a lot of the times with bitters, with, full spectrum digestive enzymes, different things like that to try to keep that metabolism good. But it's like you're going in on an endogenous level instead of an exogenous level and really getting that metabolism on a cellular level
Mhm.
instead of just putting something in to help with the mechanical part of it, I guess.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm saying all that right.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And this was a fascinating connection for me about digestive enzyme insufficiency that making all of our hydrochloric acid, our bile, our
Mhm.
pancreatic enzymes, everything that we use to digest and absorb our foods every single day requires massive amounts of ATP. So if we start to have less energy production in our body, do we see slipping of some of these really critical biochemical processes? Yes. It's why I
Mm.
love peptides because they come back to this cellular efficiency story. And when we do that, there's so many cool benefits. It's not just one thing. It's like 10 things that benefit the body.
Yeah, I mean, this is just blowing my mind with CJC. It's not one that I have dived into very far until I'm just starting, and I'm seeing that it is just, like you said, 10 things it can help with, which is pretty
Do you wanna know
incredible.
something really cool about
Yes,
CJ? Okay.
always.
There's lots of really cool things. Another really neat fact about CJC is it actually spares the cartilage in our joints from further destruction and damage. So there's a whole 'nother conversation happening with really smart orthopedists that, we think we have this philosophy of like wear and tear of joints. Just, oh, and which there is truth, right? If you're a painter,
Mhm.
if you're someone who's, doing manual labor, you're an athlete, you beat up your body more. But the piece that we forget about is the cellular level, that we can have inflammation and destruction. And they actually have been able to show with CJC that in the cells, in those chondrocytes, that they're actually healthier and they can repair and have less oxidative stress and damage over time. And some orthopedists are using peptides and they're not operating on their patients because they're
Wow.
fixing their joints from a cellular level versus, again, to your point, mechanical level down of we're going to go in and shave this out and fix it up.
Mhm.
I'm not saying, surgery sometimes is needed, but are there other pieces going on? Maybe. Again, going all the way down to the cellular level. So there's not a lot of tools we have to help cartilage.
No, there are not. Definitely. I know that my son had a knee dislocation. It pulled out, I think it was 8 centimeters of his cartilage in his knee. And so he obviously had to have surgery to pull that out. But when he went for surgery, well, when we had the pre op and stuff, I did request PRP at the time, which is a whole nother conversation for another time. But I did support my son at that time with peptides because I just knew that it was only gonna help him recover, and he's a year and a half out, and he's doing great.
Yeah, and that's a great example too of with surgeries, you can use peptides. There's a lot of
Mhm.
surgeons that are doing that now to help with faster recovery, to get better results after,
Yeah,
post-surgical results where, an athlete can go back and perform their sport again and
right.
have full, functionality of that joint.
Are they administering peptides when they're in the wound or in the opening at this
No, it's typically
it's
pre and
post?
post-op,
Pre and
yeah,
post,
that they're
okay.
using them. Mhm.
Okay, I didn't know which way they would be using that. And then the bummer thing is with peptides right now is that if you are an athlete and you're competing, you do wanna make sure that you're following WADA and checking any of the restrictions because they are so effective at repair. Unfortunately, WADA has put a lot of peptides in their prohibited list, and so you just wanna be mindful of that if you have a student athlete. You just wanna be make sure what you're doing. But I think for those of us who are weekend warriors or we, just are staying healthy, we don't have to worry about any of that, and we can dive in as far as we want. Okay, so we've talked about CJC a little bit. Everybody's really excited about that, I think. What other peptides are in the Instamed family right now, and what are you kind of looking towards in the future to add in?
We have 5 that we launched with. We're rapidly expanding our peptides. We're doing some really cool R&D, so I'll cover that. But we've talked about CJC 1295, which is a secretagogue. It's helping with growth hormone and insulin like growth factor 1 from the liver, which has a lot of repair, really good for the liver, really good for metabolism, anti-aging, lots of great stuff. BPC 157 is a peptide a lot of people have heard about. It stands for body protection compound. It's a 15 amino acid sequence peptide. Our body makes it. We discovered it in our gastric juices. So every day you're making this. It's not something that's like, oh, I'm taking it and my body doesn't make it at all, right? We're just adding into what your body's already making when you take peptides. So this is an incredible peptide for repair, healing, and it does a lot of other stuff too. So if you have muscle, tendon, ligament, bone, I mean, anything that's injured that's having problems, it's kind of like Wolverine, the ability for it to repair is pretty incredible.
Mhm.
BPC and peptides have been around for a really long time. We just don't have a lot of public human data. There is a lot of data. The Russians and the Ukrainians were really the first to put BPC on the map in terms of research around them. I mean, I've seen it like I've done it myself with muscle. I've sprained my ankle. I've used BPC. I play every week soccer in a bad mom soccer league. It's a blast. It's my therapy every week. And if I get injured, I'm like, no, I have to be able to heal myself to play the following week. So I've used BPC to heal a bunch of stuff myself. We had a doctor that fell on a boat, broke 3 ribs. She was like, Sarah, it's so painful to breathe. And I am just, miserable. I can't get into the clinic. Used one dose of BPC and she was almost completely out of pain and her ribs were in a good place in like 3 weeks. So
Wow.
it's really good for gut too. It works awesome for any gut permeability, ulcer, inflammatory things in the gut. It works on the vascular system, our endothelial lining, which is a single cell lining in all of our blood vessels that does a lot to maintain our blood pressure, blood clotting factors. It makes a lot of different hormones. And BPC actually acts on what's called vascular endothelial growth factor. So we can see really amazing things in the vascular system with BPC. It's been used after stroke, after heart attack, with reperfusion of tissue to bring more oxygen back to those
Mm,
damaged areas, head injuries. I mean, there's all kinds of uses. BPC is also a senolytic, we've learned. So it targets these old, worn out cells that are like, peace, I'm retired, but I'm not dying. I'm going to hang out and I'm going to make inflammatory substances in this back corner over here. And I'm going to drive the aging process of why you don't feel well.
mhm.
BPC goes in, it's like target, pulls it out so the immune system can get rid of those old, worn out cells. So that's a little bit about BPC. Really great peptide to start with. If you're starting peptides, you're curious. And again, response with that, some people will use one dose. And I had, again, another recent story with our strips. He's like, I've had wrist pain for years and I took one strip and within an hour, my wrist felt better. Doesn't always happen that way, right? You might need to use BPC for a couple of weeks until you really notice a change. Now, why? Probably because it's going to do repair somewhere else in the body that you can't feel. Is
Right.
actually I think is going on. Like your brain or your heart or something else. It's very protective for your liver. It's very protective for your kidneys, so there's some really cool uses of that.
I love the endothelial and the cardiovascular protection that it offers because I think a lot of people are in this 50 plus age group. We're starting to really consider the health of our veins and our arteries and our heart. And so I think that's really going to be really beneficial as we
Yeah.
age.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think, just to call out COVID infections, we know
Mhm.
it causes a lot of inflammation in
Mhm.
our vessels, our blood vessels. So BPC is a really great tool to use to counteract some of that inflammation that can happen.
Mhm. Absolutely.
GHKCU is another peptide I love. So we have that. GHKCU is starting to gain some traction. It's a smaller peptide. It's 3 amino acids in length with a copper ion attached to it. This is the one we talked about for skin, hair. It does a lot of really cool things, collagen and elastin. It increases hair follicle size in studies and helps with new hair follicle development. I'm like, that's so cool, right? A natural tool for beauty from within. I've had people say, guys who are like, my beard is getting darker. They have grays. And it's
Mhm.
almost like that pigmentation is coming back, which makes sense when we think about the aging process and what we know with epigenetic changes that happen. We know that GHKCU improves epigenetic regulation and it almost works like a stem cell. So they're using it in wound healing. So BPC with GHKCU is just fantastic. The research there is about 6 to 12 weeks. You want to use this peptide to really start to notice some of those changes that can happen. So
And would
that
you be
is,
cycling that one, do the 5 days on, 2 days off with the
yep,
GHK also? And I
yep.
didn't
So
ask that about the BPC. Would that be a similar cycle too?
yep, it would be.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, if somebody has more like an acute injury, they could
Mhm.
actually dose BPC even twice a day and do a kind of a higher dose for a shorter period of time while they're trying to heal something. And that can just, it kind of gets in there and does more work faster. The double dosing in terms of, let's say, morning and night, the logic there is we believe BPC has a half life of about 4 hours. So being able to dose it, throughout the day is going to help with a lot of those healing mechanisms that we're trying to trigger.
That makes sense. Yeah, and GHK copper is great. You'll probably have seen them touted in beauty products, and you'll see if something is ever blue, it's got that copper in it. But the thing is, we can put it on our skin, it just doesn't absorb as well and help from the inside out unless we're injecting or doing a transmucosal peptide. So I think that if you can do both ways, I think you're going to get the best benefits from the
That's a
G.
great call out. So the next peptide we can cover is thymosin alpha 1. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorites. I love this peptide. It's an immune adaptogen. We think about like herbal adaptogens, like, ashwagandha helps balance your stress response, kind of
Mhm.
bring you into this beautifully balanced place. That's how I like to think about thymosin alpha 1. So we know it can help with acute issues with the immune system. It was even used with COVID. It's been used in sepsis patients in ICU. Obviously, these are like high doses. It can be used for chronic issues, chronic viral issues, Lyme, mold, all these people who are like, I just have this ceiling on my health that I can't get past.
Mhm.
This is your peptide. It's amazing. It also balances the immune system. So it's not just, we know that it helps with T cells. It can rescue T cell deficiency, natural killer cells. But if somebody's got a lot of inflammation, more in like an autoimmune type case, we know that thymosin alpha 1 can actually lower some of those inflammatory cytokines and increase anti inflammatory cytokines. So it's very, and when we think about our immune system, it is a teeter totter and we want it to kind of go back and forth as our body needs. But sometimes we can get tipped really out of balance. And this is a great peptide to bring you back into balance. The other cool thing is it helps clear fungal things. It has
Yeah.
antiviral, antibacterial properties. And that is through whole like receptors. We think it actually might help modulate the microbiome, which is really cool.
Wow.
So
That's
people with
incredible.
this like SIBO, these chronic
Mhm.
things they can't get rid of, a lot of that has to do with immune function of the individual. And it's a great tool to use as part of a protocol, right? We never want to use peptides in a vacuum. We always want to use them as part of a bigger picture, and that's how we're going to get the biggest bang for their buck. But it's a cool use case that I've seen be really helpful in certain scenarios.
So that makes me think about when we're talking about thymosin and BPC in particular, they both seem to be working similarly but different. Can you give us, like, if somebody was going to try to make a decision between the two, where might that difference come in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one, that is a beautiful stack to use together. BPC, thymosin alpha 1, I've seen it do amazing things. Now, someone who is dealing with immune issues, let's say acutely or more chronically, I'd go thymosin alpha 1 first, as long as they're not really inflamed and struggling. If you're in a really inflamed state, I would do BPC first, lower some of the inflammation, and then add in thymosin alpha 1 to support immune balance. You
Okay.
can't really go wrong. They're
Right.
both of those peptides are tolerated, I would say, very well. The only scenario where I'd be careful with thymosin alpha 1 is if you're in a really acute autoimmune flare. I wouldn't use it there just because the immune system is already so unstable that
Mhm.
I would try to bring some balance with anti inflammatory mechanisms first, and then you could add in the immune peptide.
Okay, that's super helpful. And then with any of the others, what are you seeing with stacking any of the others? How do you, if you're going to stack, do you do them run right after the other? Do you do one at morning, one in the evening? What are you seeing being?
Yeah, so stacking of peptides are really complementary. Know that you can stack different ones for different purposes. I always like starting with one, seeing how your body responds, because
Mhm.
the biggest challenge is, oh my gosh, I want to try them all. When you learn about peptides,
Yes.
it's very overwhelming. And because of that, it's like just do one. What's your biggest goal or complaint that you're trying to go after? And then after a couple of weeks of using one of the peptides, you can add in. So a couple examples would be CJC with BPC for someone who's they want to increase their muscle mass, they're training for something, right? They're an athlete, they want to have better performance. They want to be less sore. They're trying to repair faster. those two together are amazing. CJC is awesome for people who've been on GLP-1s, lost a lot of weight, and maybe also lost too much muscle, and they're dealing with skin elasticity issues. That is a great peptide to help with that. And if they're dealing with any gut issues, right, again, BPC would be really great to use together. In a really acute repair scenario, I love BPC with GHKC because they're
Mm,
going after repair of tissue a
mhm.
little bit differently, and they're really complementary to each other.
Love it.
Thymosin alpha 1 with BPC, awesome for immune kind of interactive stuff that we're trying to do, maybe repair on the gut. We're trying to lower inflammation while we're balancing the immune system. Those are some examples that are really nice and complementary to each other.
And so if we do, let's say we do have a scenario where we're going to use BPC and GHK or any of the combos you talked about, would you separate them out one in the morning and one in the evening in those fasted states? Or would you try to do them kind of right back to back? What do you
It's
think?
flexible. That's the beautiful thing. I would say just to remember to take them, I would probably do them back to back.
Yeah,
That's just me as I, like, go through my day. If I don't, set something out and remember to do it, I'll forget. But if you
exactly.
wanna space them out, you could, but you can also take a strip back to back.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was gonna, mitigate the effects of any of them, but no, it sounds like not. So that's really exciting because remembering to take things is great, and these are so portable because when you take them out of the box, you just have this little tiny, tiny package that you can throw in your wallet. Oh, no, I was gonna ask you, how heat stable are these?
They're very heat stable.
Okay.
We've done some of our accidental stability testing and packaging testing by these have been in some of our team members' pockets, and they go through hot wash and dryer and
Mhm.
open up, and the strip is beautiful. They are heat stable, pretty high temperatures as well. We've done some stability testing on that. They do really well. I mean, the
Okay.
biggest thing that you'll notice, and this is, it's summer, we're having this podcast now, is if these sit in a hot mailbox or somewhere, the strip has it bends. It's just going to be a little bit more bendy when it
Mhm.
gets warmer, but it will come back to this nice, rigid but bendable property of the strip.
Okay. All right. So we don't have to be worried about it if we left it in the hot car and we
I
still
wouldn't
like
put it, like, on your dashboard in Phoenix,
Right.
Arizona in
Right.
120-degree heat, right? Like,
Right.
we don't wanna do that, but if you have to run in and, do some errands and you've got, a strip hanging out in your car and it's 20 minutes or something like that, it's not a big deal.
Great. Let's jump into the really fun one that I know I get a lot of questions about, which is PT 141.
Yes, PT-141 Plus is our other formula that we launched with. So this is a combo peptide formula. It has PT-141, which is a peptide that impacts central nervous system arousal and desire. It tends to work really well for women, which I love because women don't have a lot of tools, right? Hormones can be really helpful, but this is another tool that's really complementary to that, that drives more of that, like, maybe I am interested and in the mood, is something that PT 141 does very beautifully. We also have a small dose of oxytocin. We call it our bonding, our love. It's a peptide. So that is really nice because, connecting with your partner isn't just a mechanistic connection when we think about sexual wealth and health. It's really that on all levels, right? Emotional, mental, like energetically connecting. And oxytocin is a beautiful peptide for that. The third one in there is something called aminophenylpyrrole. It's not a very well known peptide, but it's really cool in that it sort of works like an ED med as a peptide for peripheral blood flow. And this again is men and women, right? We think about blood flow a lot for men with sexual wellness because we have
Mhm.
commercials and it's all over, but it's really important for women too, that we have really good blood flow. And the other thing about aminophenylpyrrole is it actually can improve mood, which is wonderful, right? Because if you're like, leave me alone, I don't want to connect, I'm stressed and upset, it's not really like a fun date night, right? Or time to connect. So the beautiful thing about this strip is that it's a combo. So we're targeting basically sexual wellness from multiple angles. When people use PT 141 Plus, I always tell them the first time they use it, you want to understand, you're going to learn how your body responds to these peptides. This
Mhm.
is a very individualized response, especially PT 141. Most people are going to want to take a strip 30 to 45 minutes before desired connection time. Some people are going to notice when they first take this formula, like, I didn't really notice a lot, 30 to 45 minutes. And then maybe 3 to 6 hours later, which is kind of wild, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. I've had some of my doctor friends are like, Sarah, I woke up in the middle of the night. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, I'm ready to go. Right. They had a delayed response. That
Mhm.
is their individual metabolism and their genetics playing into how they respond to these peptides. And it doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. You just want to understand your timeline of when you dose to
Right.
when you really notice the effects. Now, another thing for men, we made a formula that was great for women and men. Some men are going to do better with two strips
Mm. Okay.
versus one. Okay. So it's just, again, learning some of kind of your individual response,
Mhm.
experimenting with it a little bit. And then we talked about this offline a little bit, and it was a
Mhm.
great question that this really isn't a peptide you're going to use every single day.
Right.
You want to have a couple days in between. What we like to say is for PT 141 plus, you want to use it probably a max of 3 times a week.
I think people get really excited about PT 141 because it does work so well, and then they might use it the second day right after,
Hmm?
and their receptors aren't opened back up enough. I don't know if that's the mechanism.
Think you're right on that. I actually do think that you had a response and then the body has to almost come back to a homeostasis before you use it again to get that
Mhm.
beautiful response. Because again, this is a more natural approach in terms of how we're using the peptides versus like an erectile dysfunction medication.
Exactly, which is just forcing the issue, whereas this is really speaking to you on an endogenous level. One thing I want to just bring up really quick about PT 141 is some people are using it as date night, like they're both partners are getting it and just they're taking it at whatever time works for their bodies once they've figured that out, or they learn together, which can
Mhm.
be really connecting for them. But the other thing is that because I have some experience with some of my clients with PT 141 injectable. And the tricky part with that one is if you're really sensitive to it, you get really flushed and you can get really nauseous. And it's really hard to microdose that one enough to get the results without some of the side effects. I have not heard of any of the side effects with the strips. Have you heard of any of those side effects with the strips?
I haven't, and that's something we're really excited about. We
Yeah.
also didn't do a big dose, very much on purpose for
Right.
that because it's kind of the worst thing ever if you're like, "Let's have date night," and then you're like, "I'm nauseous,"
I
right?
know.
It's like the opposite. You're like, "I'm gonna go lay in bed because I don't feel well now."
Exactly, and I've seen that with some clients, and so I'm like, "Oh, this is such a wonderful option." It's just really easy to use. It's not you're not having to get out a syringe beforehand and wonder if you're gonna flush or feel nauseous. So this one is really great, and what I always say with my people is, let's optimize your hormones first, get those
Mhm.
all sorted, and then if libido's still not coming back, then let's throw this on top. And it really can be that thing that just pushes you right over the edge, to having really great intimacy, physical connection again, which is just,
Yes,
I don't know, life saving for a lot of relationships.
it
So,
is. It absolutely is,
um,
and it's cool to have other tools, and I love that you bring that up about optimizing hormones too, because I think if someone's gonna use PT 141 plus and their hormones aren't optimized, will they notice some benefits? Yeah, to an extent.
mhm.
But again, it's that they're so complementary to each other. So if you're listening to this, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to try PT 141 plus. You're perimenopausal. Maybe you're a male listening and you have lower testosterone. Just remember that's part of the scenario. We want to optimize you so that you get really good response from all the tools you're using.
Exactly, exactly. They're such a good complement, but we have to optimize first. With especially the PT-141, sometimes the other peptides, of course, the more optimized we are, the better our bodies will respond, but they can often help bring down those more systemic things, and then we can keep getting better. But with the
Yes.
PT-141, it's really essential to get those hormones optimized first. Are there any contraindications or situations where you maybe wouldn't wanna use any of these?
Yes, 100%. So, one, peptides are not for everyone in every scenario. Every peptide is different. So, it depends on the peptide because we want to understand what is that peptide impacting in terms of biochemical pathways. So, couple big takeaways here. Cautions, contraindications. Those are a little bit different, but I'm going to put them in the same category. Someone who has a known tumor or active cancer should not use CJC, any of the secretagogues. They also probably don't want to use BPC. Why? Two different reasons. One, CJC is helping with growth hormone release. It's not you taking growth hormone exogenously outside of the body, just helping with more release. But if we have uncontrolled cellular growth, we don't want to drive growth hormone in that scenario, just to be extra cautious. PC, one of the things that it does in terms of its mechanism of action is it increases angiogenesis. It's increasing blood flow to areas. That's really good when we're healing something. We don't want to give a bunch of blood flow and fuel the fire in a scenario where someone has a tumor or active cancer. Now, on the other side, remember BPC is a senolytic. So I would say it might help if you use it ahead of time, but we don't want to use it in those scenarios for someone who's got that going on.
If someone does have, like, a tumor or a growth and they would really like to use some peptides, would thymosin be a better
Mhm.
choice in
Yeah,
that?
thymosin would be really good. There's not a lot of reasons to not use thymosin. The biggest one I call out is don't use it if you've got like a really active autoimmune flare, like we talked
Okay,
about,
right.
would be the big one. GHKCU, because it has copper in it, it's not a huge amount, but it's got some. If you have genetic copper storage issues like Wilson's disease,
Mm,
you just want to be careful and you want to monitor your copper and zinc ratios, which should be done anyways in a scenario like that. But you just want to be aware that there is copper in that peptide.
okay.
PT-141 plus, because it is increasing circulation, someone who has very severe cardiovascular disease, they have valve issues, they've got something going on that's more serious, it's not a fit for you because we don't want to mess with that in any way that would put extra stress on your cardiovascular system, raise your blood pressure because it can, because it's helping with blood flow. It's transient and only lasts for maybe like 2 hours. But someone who already has really high blood pressure, they have some cardiovascular disease that's more severe, you don't wanna use it.
That's great. Okay. Well, thank you for those because it's hard to know when not to use them. That's really clear for us. Do we want to talk a little bit about how the strips can support hormone optimization?
So hormones and peptides, they're extremely complementary to each other. So if you're on bioidentical hormones, I'm like the biggest fan of them ever. When they're used properly, right? They're really incredible tools for longevity and wellness for us. Peptides, specifically the secretagogue CJC, can be really nice and complementary to hormone replacement therapy. Why? One, we understand that they actually increase hormone receptor sensitivity. So when you're using CJC alongside your hormones, you're going to get a better response from your hormones, which is really powerful, especially if you've used hormones for a while, right? Sometimes it's like, "Oh, I think I need to increase my dose or I'm not noticing as much benefit as I did previously." And why is that? Well, we're increasing the amount of growth hormone and insulin like growth factor 1. That's what CJC is going to help with, which helps our metabolism, our cellular metabolism. The better that is, the more sensitive our cells and our body is going to be to the tools we're using. Now, we also want to do things like build muscle and we want to have, good nutrition and we want to get sunlight and we want to have good hydration. Because again, in that scenario and that environment, your body's going to respond better to the peptides and your body's going to respond better to your hormones. So it's a both and they're very complementary to each other. Also, as we get older, we can get a little bit more inflamed. So another peptide I'd call out while you're on hormone replacement therapy can be something as simple as BPC to
Mhm.
help lower inflammation, do some repair. We could also say GHKCU. I love estradiol for skin health. It does a lot of really incredible beauty things. But GHKCU is a great peptide kind of beauty from within as well for
Mhm.
people in that season of life that are using HRT.
How long is a cycle if you're going to be working with optimizing the hormone, your BHRT that you're on? How many cycles would you do?
I would do 12 weeks with CJC. 12 weeks is really that sweet spot where
Mhm.
you're going to feel incredible. Now, remember, when you turn 30, your growth hormone secretion decreases by 15% every decade of life. So as you're 40, as you're 50, as you're 60, you're making about, 60 less than 60% of your optimal amounts of growth hormone and insulin like growth factor 1. The older you are, sometimes it might take a little while to really feel the benefits, but then once you're on it, it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome." So 12 weeks is ideal. You can go off for a month or 2 and then do another cycle.
That makes complete sense. I love that. Let's go into some rapid fire questions if you're okay with that. What is one supplement you'll never stop taking, whether it's a peptide or something else?
Yeah, all the peptides. Those are like my number one now in terms of they just work so well. But other supplements I really like for me, I would say is phosphatidylcholine. And that's because I'm homozygous for gene PEMT. So I
Mhm.
don't make choline well myself. 90% of women they have an inadequate intake of choline. The highest food source of choline in our diet is egg yolks. And unfortunately, I have an egg allergy. So that's
Mhm.
why, like, as a combo, it's one of those supplements that I will continually take throughout my life.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that. And that's maybe another podcast where we talk about genes and understanding, what our bodies actually need in addition to our hormones as we age and just to live healthily our whole lives.
It sheds a lot of light. It answers a lot of questions when you know how to look at your genes properly.
Yeah, definitely. What is the strangest health trend you've tried and would you or wouldn't you recommend it?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've tried a lot of things. It's really interesting. I'll just say this sun. I was actually partially allergic to the sun as a
Mm.
kid. It was just histamine. I had a lot of
Mhm.
histamine. But I think the right light exposure is pivotal to our overall health and
Mhm.
tolerating it too. Whether you tolerate light exposure or not is a clue about our
Mhm.
health. So I've been on the spectrum of that. So maybe not crazy or super weird, but realizing that the sun and light is really good for us. I would also say frequency is really powerful for our health as well. So maybe those two.
Okay, I love it. And okay, lastly, what was the first peptide you ever took? Do you remember?
CJC, first peptide. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a Greek goddess. I remember I text one of my friends he introduced me to a lot of the peptides. He's a board certified cardiologist. And I was like, I lost some body fat. I had better muscle. I worked out. I felt amazing. My mood was better. And I was like, these things are cool.
I know. I remember, I think my first one was BPC 157 because I was like, well, that thing sounds incredible. And then I was hooked. Do you think, because one of my faves of all time is TB 500, is that one that will ever be able to be in a strip, do you think?
It is. We've actually done it. So TB500 is a shorter analog of thymosin beta 4, which is more of an immune modulating peptide, but it has some anti inflammatory repair benefits. TB500 is really good at preventing scarring and fibrosis, very specifically. When we think about like BPC versus TB500, a lot of people talk about that stack together, which can be
Mhm.
really helpful. The one caveat with TB500 that I don't hear anybody talking about is you don't want to use it for a long time.
Okay.
It's a little bit stronger with some of the immune and angiogenesis pieces of the puzzle. So I would say using it for a max of 4 to 6 weeks
Hmm.
is really where you want to land with TB500. But yes, we've actually successfully developed a strip that has BPC and TB500. So stay tuned.
Oh, I will. I will definitely. And is there anything else you want to share with us about the future of Instamed and what's kind of coming down the pike
Yeah.
for you guys?
Yeah, so we're working on GLPs. They're bigger, so there's a little bit more technology involved in us doing that. We've started with a non-RX line. We will be expanding into an RX pharmaceutical line. So we have our own facilities in Salt Lake, and our first manufacturing partner is literally a block away, which we're really excited about. So we're starting with ED meds, so like tadalafil, sildenafil.
Okay.
We're working on hormones, so we're really excited about that.
Yes.
Imagine a female dosed testosterone strip.
Heck yes. Will that
So
be
we have
RX
some
or non-RX?
so testosterone is a controlled substance, so it has to be RX. Yeah, unfortunately for, that piece of it, especially at a lower dose. I wish we could just have access to it. But
Oh,
progesterone, testosterone, estradiol, we're working on all of those.
awesome.
And then some other like small molecules that work really well, right? We don't need a lot of it. So in a strip, it would make more sense. So
Mhm.
we have both our non-RX and our RX line for Instamed that we're working on moving forward.
Very exciting. So, is there anything we've missed that you'd like to talk about today?
I think I would just say if you're listening to this and you're interested in peptides and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed or I'm so curious, welcome to the club. We're all learning together. Peptides have been around for about 100 years, but GLPs really gave the masses an introduction into peptides, and we're learning. We're all learning together. They're natural tools. They're amazing tools. Lean in, ask your questions. And I always like to say, get your own story with peptides. Start with one,
Mhm.
talk to, your healthcare professional that you're working with. They're learning too. So remember that. None of us like know everything because we just don't know everything now. But you're getting in early on the wave, and now you have a way to use peptides without injection, which is really exciting.
Exactly. And then I know you do a lot of education online too. I've loved watching some of your reels and your education. So, where can people connect with you and see what you're up to?
Yeah, so our website for Instamed is getinstamed.com. So if you want to look at we have peptide education, we have more information about the science on that side of things. And then my personal socials are sarahmorgan.co. It's also my website. So you can follow me. I'm doing more and more on Instagram and TikTok, and check out my website as well.
And Sarah's been kind enough to share with us a code for 15% off on the website. I do carry these products in stock. I always have them in stock already in Missoula, Montana. If you are here, you can pick them up today. Otherwise, you can order them on my website. But if you want to order them directly from Instamed, the code there is Missy15. So just MISSY 15. And that will get you 15% off straight through their website. And it helps support the podcast a little bit. So it's really wonderful. It's kind of a win win. Okay, so I have a final question for you. You're stuck on a deserted island, but you get to pack an apothecary. What 3 to 5 supplements or products are you bringing?
I would bring my phosphatidylcholine. I
Hmm.
would probably bring some ketones. I love ketones in terms of what they do for our metabolism, lower inflammation. I love Gerolsteiner mineral water. Some say
Oh,
Gerolsteiner. It's a German mineral water that has amazing calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonate levels. So I'd pack a ton of that, and I'd probably bring some electrolytes because I just love electrolytes.
very nice. Well, you will stay very hydrated on that island.
Yes, I will.
Love
I'll
it.
be good to go.
Wow, Sarah, it has just been a pleasure to talk to you today. I just can't thank you enough for your time and your expertise. And thank you for creating these for the masses and thinking about what could be really helpful to people at large, not just the people who are willing to inject themselves. It's really just a blessing to the world around us. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
It's my pleasure to have you. And I hope you'll come back and we'll talk about genes.
Yeah, that'd be super fun. I'd love that.
All right. If this episode made you smile, think hard, or hop onto my website to grab your very first peptide, share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thank you for joining Sarah Morgan and I today here on the Menopause Midwife. Be well.
Thank you for joining me here today on the Menopause Midwife. If you'd like more information or to work with me, feel free to check out my website and book a wellness consultation at ohm406.com. Be well.